all these very sensitive issues for us. If something like this will be in the treaty, in the final text, which I'm sure we will not know actually before, will the Commission oppose?
They will, exactly. The Commission will not accept anything that goes beyond our current European legislation, and therefore these things do go beyond, and therefore we will oppose it, and therefore it will not be in a treaty, because it's a consensus-based treaty.
Good. You can't get any clearer than that, I would say. We have now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 speakers further on the list, and I would also close it at that point, unless anybody indicates now to receive the floor. One more, okay. But then, so please.
Hello, Mr. Devine. I'm Jeremy Zimmerman, co-founder and spokesperson for La Quadrature du Net. And I've got, first of all, a quick comment. There are provisions about the circumvention of technical measures in ACTA. And we got a directive in Europe called the UCD. You know it better than I do, the UCD 2001 directive. And we're still waiting for an impact assessment. And actually, in many countries, it has been proven to fail. Some innovators just moved away from Europe, and notably from France, because of those provisions. And there's still no impact study, and therefore we will cement, petrify, as Mr. Hammerstein told it before, those dispositions. So I find this a bit shocking. But it's not my main concern. My main concern is, even if we believed you, I didn't say it. Even if we believed you about not going further than the EU acquis with your part of the negotiation, you told us that the criminal sanction part are being negotiated by the Council, by the Presidency. So some parts are being negotiated, and they are the strongest, the most dissuasive, the most important parts of the criminal sanctions. In some leaks you won't comment on, we found some wordings going straight out of the IPRED 2 directive, the part about inciting and abetting and aiding and so on. We also find the wording about the commercial scale being the only limit to the scope of the treaty. And nothing is given to help interpret this notion of commercial scale, and we think it's a trap, because anyone will interpret it in its own way, and we already know how Vivendi Universal interpret 1 million people doing one non-commercial act as being a commercial scale. So this is very shocking. And so we have unelected people who are now negotiating criminal sanctions. Can you tell us that this is the normal process in trade agreements to have negotiated criminal sanctions? Thank you.
Thanks. Very briefly, then, on the commercial scale, I mean, there's nothing shocking in commercial scale. This is a criteria in the EU since 1994, as it is in all WTO members. So there's nothing new. And yes, it is true that commercial scale is not defined, just like many other legal concepts are not defined. I mean, I can think of the good faith concept. You know, contracts have to be executed of good faith in French law. Good faith is not defined. It's left to the judges' appreciation. So it's not exactly Vivendi, to quote you, who would define what is commercial scale. It's up to a judge, which is rather different. And indeed, commercial scale is the law for the EU, and it will not change. And we will not change that neither. I think that's the only question. Do you want another question?
About negotiating criminal sanctions.
Negotiating criminal sanctions, yes. There are many, I mean, criminal sanctions of IP, of intellectual property enforcement, is kind of become relatively common in most free trade agreements. There is a chapter or a section on that, either the FTAs of the EU or the FTAs of the US, etc. And there is nothing abnormal there. Of course, as long as there is no new criminalization, if you want, or there is no change to the criminal law. But I guarantee you that I don't think member states, to start with, since it's a rotating presidency on their behalf who negotiates these provisions, would accept it, because they'd be schizophrenic. Why would they refuse something in the Council and accept it through an international negotiations? Of course not. So it's all consistent with the existing law. And as you can imagine, there will be no new criminalization or change of criminal law through these negotiations in Europe.
Thank you very much. We're now going to bundle, taking 2 questions at a time. First, Mrs. Lichtenberger, and then...
Okay. Of course, Mr. De Vigny, there were some questions left open when you were talking, which is nothing new to me. But anyway, if you say commercial scale, which interpretation then will you be using for the European context? From which proposal or whatsoever? Which interpretation of the term commercial scale will be used then if it's not defined? And it can't be defined conclusively in this international treaty. Second question, so if there's no change at all in Europe, what the hell is the whole thing for if we don't have countries like China, etc. on board? I mean, what does that help? What does that really help for the problem that we have with counterfeiting? So why don't we limit it to it and really go for it? Why don't we really look for a more focused approach on the whole issue? Why do we include lots of things that raise lots of concerns in people's concerning civil rights? Why is there no mentioning on the limits that civil rights safeguarding would pose on these treaties? And at last, one word to the trust that you ask us to have. I do read very carefully lots of proposals from the Commission, and this does not really give me the trust that lots of things that you right now excluded would not be, let's say, in the master plan of the European